This is True News, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. I'm Rick Wiles. The Pentagon announced today that President Biden is dispatching 2,000 more troops to Europe, most of them to Poland, and moving 1,000 troops from Germany to Romania to bolster NATO's eastern flank. The troops are part of the Army's 82nd Airborne Division. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said the troops are not going to fight in Ukraine. Meanwhile, President Putin accused the United States of trying to goad Russia into an all-out war with the United States. Doc Burkhart and I have more on this development, plus Israel's war plans to attack Iran and Israel's ongoing espionage activities inside the USA. So, Doc, once again, war in Eastern Europe is back on the front page. It calms down for a few days and then it flares back up. Mr. Biden sending 3,000 U.S. troops to Eastern Europe is not going to de-escalate.
No, on the contrary.
Tension. It's going to increase it.
Yes.
We got a Wall Street Journal report out today on the 3,000 troops Mr. Biden has sent to Europe.
Right. So President Biden is directing the Pentagon to deploy more than 3,000 American troops to bolster the defense of European allies in the first major movement of U.S. forces in Russia's military standoff with Ukraine, U.S. officials said. Mr. Biden is sending roughly 2,000 troops from Fort Bragg to Poland and Germany this week and repositioning about 1,000 troops that are part of a Germany-based infantry striker squadron to Romania on the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's eastern flank closest to Russia, officials said. Now, in addition, the Pentagon expects to make other moves of forces inside Europe and has ordered several thousand more troops to be on standby to deploy beyond the 8,500 troops given similar orders last week, officials said. And so this ramp up is continuing here. And notice that they're making a big deal about deploying strictly to Eastern Europe, not to Ukraine. They'll repeat that refrain over and over again.
Because Ukraine is not a member of NATO.
Absolutely. So
they're putting the troops in NATO member states. So we're now looking at nearly 12,000 American troops being deployed to Eastern Europe in recent weeks.
Has Russia threatened Eastern Europe at all? Has Russia made any threats on Eastern Europe at all?
Not at all. The United States and NATO are making threats to Russia and issuing sanctions, accusing them of planning a war. And the Russians just stay calm about it, and they continue to push their talking points, their negotiating points,
right,
which the U.S. refuses to take seriously.
Right.
Because those demands from Russia are move your troops and your tanks and your weapons away from our border. We don't feel safe with this many troops and rockets staring at us. So, again, all the Russian troops, listen to this, all the Russian troops are in Russia.
Right. They have not crossed into Ukraine. They've not done anything like that.
America's troops are not in America.
They're on somebody else's border.
Yes.
Not our border, somebody else's border.
That's right. We don't defend our border here in the United States. We invite criminals to come across the border. We'll buy them bus tickets. The United States government will secretly fly them in charter planes around the country and drop them off. We don't defend our border. We threaten other people's borders.
You're right.
So the U.S. government threatens the American border, and it threatens the Russian border. Washington threatens the U.S. border.
Yes.
Who is the biggest enemy of the U.S. border?
D.C.
The U.S. government.
Yes.
I've never thought about it like that. The biggest threat to the U.S. border is the U.S. government. And so the Russians are dealing with the fact that the U.S. government is the biggest threat to their border.
Wow.
These people in control, this ruling class, this super elite, are very warlike. They're aggressive and warlike. And they are constantly pushing against other people to push them around, bully them, make demands, and threaten them with war. We got a brief report. Fox News had put out an update on Mr. Biden's deployment of U.S. troops. Let's watch it.
Thousands of additional U.S. troops about to get their marching orders as the Pentagon gets ready to respond to possible military action by Russia. Peter Doocy, straight to the North Lawn of the White House. What have you learned about this, Peter? Good morning there as we begin a new hour.
Good morning. For several weeks now, officials around here have been saying they think a Russian invasion of Ukraine is imminent, but it was just talk until this morning because the commander-in-chief is actually doing something about it. It's a big story because it's a big number. 3,000 more U.S. troops heading to Eastern Europe. We are told most likely to Poland and Romania. And this is on top of the 8,500 U.S. troops that have been given ready to deploy orders as part of a NATO agreement, where basically if NATO decides that they need to go in and show some more force, they would be part of that group. So more than 11,500 troops now committed to this effort. And I have been speaking to some senior administration officials. This is what I'm told so far. At the president's direction and following Secretary Austin's recommendation, the Department of Defense will reposition certain Europe-based units further east, forward deploy additional U.S.-based units to Europe, and maintain the heightened state of readiness of response forces to meet these commitments. These forces are not going to fight in Ukraine. They are not permanent moves. They respond to current conditions. I am also told that this is going to be a mix of adjusting the posture of troops already in Europe and then some new deployments from the U.S. to supplement existing reassurance presences. This is all temporary and nothing to Ukraine. And we are also told that the U.S. troops are going to be coming from Fort Bragg. They'll be deploying from Fort Bragg, and that we are going to get some more details at a Pentagon briefing with John Kirby that should begin any minute.
Doc, in the United States, across the board, every establishment news media outlet, television, print, digital, online,
Yes.
every single establishment news outlet is pro-war.
Yes. Which one's anti-war? Can you name it?
None. How about just report the facts? With the exception of Tucker Carlson, who's the only one on any establishment news network who has not gone with the narrative. Everybody else pushes the narrative. Russia wants to invade Ukraine. Putin is a bully. He wants to attack. He lays awake at night thinking of where he can start a war. He has to be dealt with.
And you're right, it goes all across the board. The mainstream outlets and even what you consider the alternative outlets like Newsmax and OAN.
Absolutely.
They're fully on board as well.
And the Christian networks like CBN, they're all pro-war.
Yes.
It's just True News stands here saying,
Why war?
why war? This is insanity to start a world war over Ukraine.
Now,
and Putin, as I'll say it again, he does not want Ukraine. He wants NATO to get off his border.
Right. Now, in that response that Peter Doocy was talking about with a senior official there, a couple of things that stood out to me, Rick. One was they made a big deal about, of course, we are not deploying any troops to Ukraine. It's strictly Eastern Europe. We're repositioning forces. But they also said readiness of response forces. Mm-hmm. Now, that may just be a casual phrase to a lot of people out there, but I think that was a key word there because NATO has ready response forces. And so that tells me that they're ready to deploy along with, at NATO's directive at any time.
Ready to respond means ready to respond to a war.
Yes. And so just because they're in Eastern Europe now doesn't mean they're not going to be in Ukraine later.
But John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman, said these troops are not going to fight in Ukraine.
Right.
But where are they going to fight?
Well, apparently they're defending their NATO allies against aggression, Rick.
So Russia plans a blitzkrieg across all of Eastern Europe? They're going to take everything?
Well, you got to have some justification for sending the troops over, don't you? So, but yeah, John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesperson, just minutes after this report aired this morning, Mr. Kirby came out with his statement. I pulled this short clip. We have more from Mr. Kirby later. But in this clip, he says the reason why troops are being deployed is because we need to defend our NATO allies from aggression.
We stand united. We have said that repeatedly. We say it again today. These movements are unmistakable signals to the world that we stand ready to reassure our NATO allies and deter and defend against any aggression. Now, as the Secretary said Friday, we do not know if Russia has made a final decision to further invade Ukraine, but it clearly has that capability. The Department of Defense will continue to support diplomatic efforts led by the White House and the State Department to press for resolution. We do not believe conflict is inevitable. The United States, in lockstep with our allies and partners, has offered Russia a path to de-escalate. But we will take all prudent measures to assure our own security and that of our allies. Now, finally, just one note. I note that in the past few hours, a proposal made by the United States leaked to a European news outlet. We did not make this document public.
Okay, in the art of propaganda. So numerous things that Mr. Kirby said were true, but
Right.
there were words and sentences tied together to create a propaganda message, even though the components of the paragraph together, all right, the components were accurate, but tied together they create a propaganda message.
Yes.
Okay, for example, he said, we, meaning the Pentagon, we don't know if Putin has made the decision to invade. Okay, that's an accurate statement,
Yes.
but it implies that Putin's sitting in the Kremlin, like wondering, do I do this or not?
Right. Is it today? Do I wait a week? When's it going to happen?
He's not pondering whether he's going to invade Ukraine, but it's an accurate statement to say we don't know if he's made the decision.
Right.
Okay, then he said, but we know he has the capability to invade. Yes.
And so do you.
Yes, you do too. And Russia has the capability to invade Africa. I mean, they have the capability, but they're not interested in doing it.
And
What Mr. Kirby will not say is our troops in Eastern Europe are a national security threat to Russia. Those are the words he won't say.
Right.
Because that is the truth, and that does not fit the narrative that the West wants the world to hear.
And he ended that before he did the little clip there at the end. He did say, we do this for our security and the security of our allies. Our security, what threat is there to our security today?
I feel insecure that you people in the Pentagon are doing this. That makes me insecure, Doc. What would make me secure would be an announcement, we're at peace with Russia. That would make me feel secure.
Yes.
But I have insecurity wondering if the war lunatics in the West are going to start World War III.
And I think they want it. They want it.
They've wanted it for years. Now, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the man who doesn't have a comb, but he is in number 10 Downing Street. They have no combs in number 10, but he's there as the Prime Minister. He's been sending a lot of lethal military aid to Ukraine.
Plane loads of it.
Yes,
every night.
Shipping it in every night. And he also had a phone call with Mr. Putin. So Vladimir Putin reached out to Mr. Johnson. One or the other connected, and they had a phone call. But I want you to see something that happened approximately the same time they were having that phone call. This happened today over Scotland.
So Royal Air Force Typhoon jets were scrambled today to track an unidentified aircraft flying north of Scotland.
Well, they were identified later. They were Russian Bear bombers.
Oh, the big ones. Mm-hmm. So yes. Vladimir Putin was also sending a phone call one way or the other, too, wasn't
he was like, Boris, look out your window.
See those big planes flying over there?
You keep sending rockets and mortars and tanks and whatever else you're shipping over to Ukraine, and we're going to drop something right on top of number 10 Downing Street. That's where this is at. that Putin is sending nuclear bombers to fly near the UK border while he's talking
to the Prime Minister.
to the Prime Minister.
Who's been blowing all week, who needs a war to distract everybody from
the
his
demands
parties.
that he resign because he's a hypocrite on COVID lockdowns.
Well, one of the things that comes out of all this narrative, Rick, is that NATO is one big happy family, that they're all unified in this decision, that everything going on against Russia is a bad thing, and that they're all just, wanting this opportunity to show Russia its place and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be mean to Ukraine, Russia.
That's not the truth, though.
No, it's not. And so there are cracks in the wall, so to speak. This is Daily News Hungary. And in this story, Hungary's troops can meet the challenges of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, says Defense Minister. Now, the headline here is kind of deceiving here. You have to dig into the article to get the real gist of the story. Hungary is committed to NATO, Defense Minister Tibor Benko said after talks with his British counterpart Ben Wallace in Budapest on Monday. However,
who offered Boris Johnson, offered to send British troops to Hungary.
Yes.
That's why there were Russian bombers flying over Scotland today. And so Hungary's President Viktor Orban said, thank you very much, but the Hungarian army can defend our country.
Right. And so Daily Mail today is reporting more splits in NATO as Hungary says it doesn't want UK troops for now. And Viktor Orban travels to Moscow for one-on-one talks with Vladimir Putin.
Now keep this on the screen because the man on the right, Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, is also the man who chased George Soros out of Hungary.
Yes.
He knows what's going on, Doc. Viktor Orban knows how the game is being played. He single-handedly chased Soros out of his country.
And he is a dynamic presence. I actually saw him speak when we were at Davos a couple years ago before all this craziness kicked in a very small session room. Mm-hmm. And he is quite a dynamic character in presentation and speaks great mm-hmm. English. But he is very committed to Hungary. I mean, if I recall in the presentation that he made mention of George Soros. And he was unafraid, even in that environment at Davos. And so he is quite the committed individual.
Because, Soros is capable of color revolutions and overthrowing governments. And you can be certain Soros is involved in this operation against Putin. I mean, the U.S. has targeted Russia for a color revolution.
Yes.
They want an uprising. If they can't do a war, they'll get a revolution going. But the point that we're making here today is that the president of Hungary told Boris Johnson, thank you for the offer, but we don't need UK troops in our country. We have our own army, and we're not interested in becoming a target for Russian ICBMs.
Right. And it's interesting, he's doing his best to try to actually talk to Vladimir Putin. Nobody else wants to, it seems like.
Yeah, well, he also said that Russia has some valid points, and they ought to be considered. So that goes against the narrative.
Right.
And they can't allow that. So pray for Viktor Orban. He's a brave man. I've been following him for years. He's a very outstanding head of state for Hungary. The next one is, this is BBC. Putin says U.S. trying to draw Russia into war.
And they are doing that, sir. They're doing exactly that.
He must be watching True News. He's now saying the things that we say. You notice that?
Yes. So we actually have a small clip here of a presentation by President Vladimir Putin addressing these most recent concerns over Ukraine and NATO's attempts to try to draw Russia into a conflict with the alliance.
США вышли из договора по противоракетной обороне.
Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the U.S. and its Western allies on Tuesday of ignoring Russia's security concerns and deliberately creating a scenario designed to lure Russia into war. In his first direct public comments on the Ukraine crisis for nearly 6 weeks, a defiant Putin showed no signs of backing down from security demands that Western countries have called non-starters and possible excuses to launch an invasion.
We already can see that fundamental Russian concerns were ignored.
Russia is demanding that NATO halt any further enlargement, bar Ukraine from ever joining the alliance, and pull back forces and weaponry from Eastern European countries. Putin said Washington is not primarily concerned with Ukraine's security, but with containing Russia.
That is the problem. In this context, Ukraine is just a tool to reach this goal. It can be reached by various means, by drawing us into a military conflict and making their European allies impose against us those tough sanctions the U.S. talks about today.
Well, Doc, for the past several weeks, the White House has been telling us Russia is going to invade Ukraine any minute.
Right.
It could happen today.
Oh, it's imminent. That's the key word that was floated for a couple weeks. But after President Biden's meeting with Mr. Zelensky, suddenly that word imminent didn't have as much meaning as it did before, because Mr. Zelensky was coming out and saying, hey, I'm here in Ukraine. I'm telling you, it's not imminent. It's not. And we pointed out even the Ukraine Tourist Ministry had their sites up and say,
we're open
for business. And so, so this week, the White House has actually tried to walk back that word. So Fox reported earlier today, White House is backing away from calling Russian Ukraine invasion imminent. And so the White House spokesperson, Jen Psaki, Peppermint Patty, had to respond to these questions today when they came up. This is her explanation on why they're walking back that word.
One last question. Last week, I believe in here you said that the assessment still was that a Russian invasion is imminent. That's the word that you'd used before, that other officials have used, and you used it last week. But yesterday, the ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said she would not use the word imminent. She said she does not think a Russian invasion of Ukraine is imminent. So I guess we just need some clarification on where that assessment stands right now.
I used that once. I think others have used that once, and then we stopped using it because I think it sent a message that we weren't intending to send, which was that we knew that President Putin had made a decision. I would say the vast majority of times I've talked about it, we said he could invade at any time. That's true. We still don't know that he's made a decision.
Okay, so you're not using that word.
I think I used it once last week.
But the decision now is that you're not describing it as imminent anymore.
I haven't in over a week.
Okay.
All right, so last week it was imminent, but this week it's not imminent, Rick, okay? We're not using that word anymore. And besides, I only used it once, and nobody else is using it. And nobody.
And anybody else using the word?
Well, she said no one else is using it now. Everybody's backed off on it. But remember, we talked about Mr. Kirby earlier, and during his briefing today, the word imminent came up. Listen to this.
Thanks. One more. The number two at the State Department projected yesterday that there could be an invasion by mid-February. Are you seeing that same intelligence? And if so, how are you making preparations around that intelligence?
I'm not going to speculate on timing. We've always said, and said for quite some time, that another incursion by Russia could be imminent. And imminent means imminent. So we're watching this every single day, and I think I'm just going to avoid the temptation to guess as to what the timing would be. The only thing I'd add is we still don't believe that there's been a final decision by Mr. Putin to launch another invasion. We still believe here at the department that there is time and space for diplomacy. I think you saw Secretary Blinken, they talked about this just the other day, and the State Department has, in fact, responded with some written responses to the Russians, and so we're waiting to hear their feedback on that. So we still think there's time and space for diplomacy. I think, obviously, that's the preferred path here, to de-escalate in a peaceful, calm way and destabilize without any shots being fired. But we're watching it every single day.
So imminent is imminent, Rick.
Yes,
so is it imminent? Is it imminent over there, but not imminent at the White House?
But he doesn't want to guess on timing.
No, but imminent is imminent, Rick. And so these guys don't know what's going on up there. The only reason why they're backing off on this whole imminent thing anyway is because Joe Biden was probably using that word with President Zelensky of the Ukraine, saying listen, it's imminent. Russians are coming in any moment now, and he's over there going, where are they at? And so, but they gotta roll back the narrative. And notice that the media gives them a free pass on it, really, virtually,
of course,
basically.
Well, the reporters they're not very deep in their understanding of what's going on in the world. They really aren't. They're lazy. I'm talking about the American news reporters. They're lazy. They don't read. They don't research. They take the talking points that their editor gives them, and their editor works for the CIA.
Right.
And they call themselves journalists. They don't report. They don't investigate anything. They're not very deep intellectually. They're not deep. They're very surface level. They go with what they're told, and they don't question anybody. Germany is silencing the telecast of RT, Russia Today, inside the country of Germany. They've been blocked because you wouldn't want the German people to hear another version of what's going on in Ukraine.
Right. So the German Broadcasting Authority said that it had banned the transmission of RT. Now Moscow is saying, well, we're going to take retaliatory measures on that, which means they will likely block access to maybe some German media outlets in Russia. And so you see a little bit of this tit for tat going on there. That's about all that Germany is going to do, because they're not committing troops or anything like that to this current tension climb with Ukraine, because they like to stay warm in winter. So.
That's right. Well, listen, we're going to take a break. Don't be complacent about what's happening in the middle, in Eastern Europe. None of us want to see a war break out, but at the same time, you have a spokesman at the Pentagon saying war is imminent.
Yes.
Think about what he's...
Imminent is imminent.
The spokesman in the Pentagon is saying war is imminent. So we have to take them at their word. They're prepared to go to war at any minute. When we come back, we're going to tell you about how Israel is planning to go to war against Iran and the preparations that they are currently taking. All of us, we need to be ready. And that means make sure we have plenty of food in our homes to get through a long, long season of supply disruptions, shortages, and a breakdown in society. We'll be back after this message from Heaven's Harvest.
If this pandemic has taught us anything, being prepared is everything. Heaven's Harvest survival food is not only delicious, it has a 25-year shelf life. Packaged in state-of-the-art sealed Mylar bags, then sealed in grab-and-go food-grade buckets, Heaven's Harvest survival food is second to none. Whether you want to be prepared for 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year, our survival food kits have everything you need. Don't delay. Call or visit heavensharvest.com. Order yours today.
Well, the Israeli Air Force is practicing for war against Iran. This is today's Times of Israel. Israel Air Force drilled massive attack on Iran in presence of a United States military officer.
Now, to me, that seems really significant, Rick.
Yes.
That aspect of it. We always know they're preparing for war with Iran.
But they deliberately made sure that a high-level U.S. officer in the U.S. military was present to witness the war drill.
That's right, Rick.
To take the message back to Joe Biden.
So a U.S. official attended a classified Israel Air Force drill simulating a massive attack on Iran's nuclear program that was held 2 weeks ago, according to a Tuesday report. A U.S. Air Force officer participated in the drill as an observer, Israel's Khan public broadcaster said. The drill involved dozens of jets and included various scenarios, including mid-air refueling, long-range strikes, and responses to anti-aircraft missiles. Now, the unusual participation of a U.S. official was touted by the report as evidence of a shift in the American approach to Iran's nuclear program as negotiations for a nuclear deal have appeared to falter. A U.S. State Department official told reporters on Monday that the window of opportunity for reaching a potential nuclear deal with Iran was closing. The quoted, Iran's nuclear program is advancing. A deal will become irrelevant in a few weeks, he said, noting that this has been made clear to Iran as well as other parties participating in the talks in Vienna. So Iran's nuclear program is imminent, I guess. Huh?
And in a few weeks, what date would that take us up to?
About mid-February.
And what is Mr. Kirby and others, what have they been saying for weeks about Russia?
That war is imminent with Russia.
About when?
About mid-February.
About mid-February. Could it be that the United States is planning to go to war in mid-February?
Do you think they got a big circle around Valentine's Day, as possible? This would be a great day to start a war. So the middle of February here. So
look, we hope it doesn't happen. I am praying and hoping this does not happen, but at the same time, I have to listen to what they're saying.
Right.
You can't just dismiss it and go, oh, they're just talking. It's not going to happen. No, we can't ever think that way. We have to pray. We have to hope and believe that these wars don't start. But at the same time, you have to be aware that high-level politicians and government officials and military leaders are openly talking about war in the next several weeks.
Right.
Not my words. I'm quoting them. War is imminent. Imminent is imminent. I mean, this is what we've been hearing for weeks. Somewhere around the middle of February, Putin's going to invade. Well, we just heard Israel's going to invade Iran in a couple of weeks. That the peace talks are irrelevant.
Right. That the deal is falling apart now. That the time is closing. The window is closing, Rick.
Doc, do you remember a month or two ago when they were trying to restart the negotiations with Iran? And the day before the meeting started, Israel, I'm trying to remember how, I don't recall, Israel attacked an Iranian facility somewhere. Something happened to Iran. And everybody knew it came from Israel. And I said to you then, Israel is trying to sabotage the peace talks.
They needed a little more time.
They're trying to sabotage. They don't want Iran to negotiate with the Biden administration. They want to make Iran angry so that they walk out of the peace talks. Okay, so here we are now, early February, and we're being told the peace talks are a failure. Looks like we're going to have a war. That's what they wanted in the first place. So the next couple of weeks could be extremely dangerous. Take the time that you have to bolster your food supplies, necessities, and hold on for the possibility of a major war breaking out in Europe and the Middle East.
So an unverified report last week said the drill was carried out over the Mediterranean and involved an unusually large contingent of American-made F-15, American-made F-16, and American-made F-35 fighter craft, as well as American-made Boeing mid-air refueling tankers. I want to stress, all those military pieces of equipment are American-made.
And Israel could not attack anybody if it didn't have American weapons.
Yes.
That you and I paid for with our tax money.
And the money we save them on their military, they divert to other projects, Rick.
They sure do. This next story is going to be very interesting. This is compliments of BigLeaguePolitics.com. Army whistleblower. Israel's Mossad spy agency set up a laptop stand at a shopping mall near an army base to spy on American troops.
I'm shocked, Rick. Israel spying on the United States? What are you suggesting?
The Zionists spy on the United States, and they steal our secrets, and they use it to build up their Zionist state.
And never get in trouble for it.
And they also share it with China. That's been going on for decades.
So the article says operatives for the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, set up a laptop kiosk at a shopping mall near a U.S. Army base to sell laptops rigged with spyware to U.S. military service members, a former Army intelligence analyst tells Big League Politics. And he said the U.S. military found out about it but kept it quiet. Now, Cody R., former Army intelligence analyst who served in Afghanistan, vowed to put his hand on the Bible and swear to the following story about how the Israeli government has a mistrust in everyone, including its allies. He said, I was in the intelligence field for several years. It's very delicate and difficult business. He said, in early 2012, I did my basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. After finishing basic combat training, I was sent to Fort Wachua, I never get this right, Arizona, to begin training as an intelligence analyst. And our whistleblower Cody R. told Big League Politics, every Army base has a town next to it, this one called Sierra Vista, and it has a crappy little mall. Well,
I've been to Sierra Vista. That's not nice to say about their mall.
Well, after enough time in training, you're allowed to leave the base during the weekend as long as you're back for evening and Sunday counts. Lots of soldiers hang out at the mall, and all malls have those little kiosks that sell sunglasses and cheap jewelry and stuff. So at some point, a laptop kiosk became a thing at the Sierra Vista Mall. These laptops were real expensive for the time, somewhere between $800 and $1,700. These laptops were, however, being sold at deals to service members for hundreds of dollars less than the retail value. And it's pretty easy to pick out service members, their hair, glasses, tan lines on their wrist, and age, the whistleblower said. He said, well, at some point it became knowledge on base about these laptops, and that set off some bells and whistles in senior leadership. CID, that's Army's intelligence, was dispatched to investigate. What did they find? Well, these computer kiosk salesmen were Mossad operatives, and the laptops had software and hardware installed to spy. You could reinstall the software, but the chips hardwired reinstalled and still gave them access to the keyboard, microphone, webcam, and screen. Think about it. Soldiers often take their laptops on deployment, and OPSEC is also often preached, but isn't always followed. There is the Israel I know, our whistleblower stated. And it's interesting, they do it near a basic training base, and these you get the soldiers when they're just getting in the military, and they'll take those laptops on deployment with them wherever they end up, no matter where in the world. And so suddenly, Israel has access to hundreds of locations around the world.
Doc, this is not the first time I've heard of Israeli spies in American shopping malls. This is actually a very old story. So we go back to September 11, 2001.
Okay.
And the FBI was investigating Israeli spies working out of kiosks in shopping malls across America. Fox News did a series of reports on it, and then it was suddenly shut down. That entire Fox News investigation just went away. So did the FBI investigation. Some of you remember that. The Israelis in the shopping mall kiosks after 9/11. They were actually there before 9/11. That's why the FBI was investigating them. There was a connection to the Israeli spies in the shopping malls. There was a connection to 9/11.
At least at that time they were investigating.
And the FBI was investigating them.
Before it got shut down.
Yes. Yes. You don't hear about it anymore. There was another big investigation. Carl Cameron. You remember Carl Cameron?
Yeah, you remember that.
Carl Cameron did that investigation. And, his career, he was a very good reporter.
Yes.
And he did another investigation on Israel. And after that, Carl Cameron got reassigned to, covering,
dog sled races.
Yeah, dog sled races or something like that. You didn't hear any more hard-hitting reports from Carl Cameron. The other one that Carl Cameron did at the time of 9/11 was the Israelis getting their hands on American cell phone records.
Now, I seem to remember that story.
Yes.
So,
yes. And what they were doing, this is in the early days of cell phones.
right.
Okay?
Early 2000s, yes.
Yeah, late 90s and early 2000s. And so the Israelis had a phone company, a company that managed billing.
Yes, I remember.
Now,
the
you know
story
where I'm
now.
going?
Yes.
They managed, you get your bills from your cell phone company.
Right.
I don't know how many phone companies still actually send out a paper bill.
And your assumption is that, oh, well, these bills are coming from Duluth, Minnesota, or
Yes.
from Broken Arrow,
from
Arizona.
T-Mobile's headquarters,
Oklahoma.
or somebody. Yeah, no, they were coming from an Israeli company. The American phone companies would contract with this Israeli company to generate your phone bill, and you'd get an envelope with pages of phone calls that you made.
Right.
Well, the Israelis were not doing that to make money. They were doing it to get the phone records of every American in the country.
And that was just at the beginning of texting, too. They also had access, I remember this part of the story, they also had access to every text, basically, that every phone had been billed on.
Yes.
And so they had all that information as well. And so
the next time you hear some Christian Zionist preacher talk about how wonderful Israel is, and we have to stand with Israel, tell him just to blow it out his ear.
Well,
because they're not our friend, they are our enemy.
Well, thankfully, operatives in Israel don't worry about cell phone networks anymore, right?
Yeah, right. Well, wait till you hear this next report. The infamous NSO group, which is this Israeli spy company, founded and controlled by former Israeli spies.
Yes.
And so they're the ones that have been behind a lot of really shady business deals with the Arab sheiks and kings, where they did exactly what we said was happening years ago, 2017, 2018, when I said that Jared Kushner was negotiating, that he was selling out the Palestinians. He was getting the Arabs to betray the Palestinians by selling to the Arab countries the Israeli spyware to spy on the Arab people. And that's exactly what Kushner was doing. Israel sold their spy software to Arab kings and sheiks and princes to spy on the Arab people, to give them more power,
and
to know who was opposing them.
And now there are other countries that have caught on to it too. There was a story last week in Poland, dumping out on NSO that it appeared on that. But
NSO software has showed up everywhere in the world on people's phones. You can guarantee it's all over the United States. So here, look at this headline. This is the Washington Post.
Jeff Bezos' blog.
Washington Post. NSO offered bags of cash. I haven't heard that term since I left Maryland. Good old Democratic Party politics. NSO offered bags of cash for access to U.S. cell networks, whistleblower claims.
Right. So the way the story lays out is like this. The surveillance company NSO Group offered to give representatives of American mobile security firms bags of cash in exchange for access to global cellular networks, according to a whistleblower who has described the encounter in confidential disclosures to the Justice Department that have been reviewed by the Washington Post. Now, the mobile phone security expert Gary Miller alleges that the offer came during a conference call in August 2017 between NSO Group officials and representatives of his employer at the time, Mobilium, a California-based company that provides security services to cellular companies worldwide. The NSO officials specifically were seeking access to what is called the SS7 network. Now, this is a network that helps cell companies route calls and services as their users roam the world, according to Miller. It's sort of like the old-fashioned switchboard, remember, in all the old TV shows and stuff, except this is all virtual now. So now Miller is the former Mobilium, surveillance companies try to access cellular communication networks to geolocate targets and provide other spying services. So cellular companies seek to prevent such intrusions by restricting access to the SS7 network and using firewalls to block computer queries that seek personal information on their customers. Now, Miller is a former Mobilium vice president who left the company in 2020 and now works as a mobile security researcher for Citizen Lab, a leading critic of NSO and its surveillance operations.
Okay, so the guy was a VP at the company.
Right, so he wasn't some low-level tech or anything like that. He says that the NSO Group was specifically interested in the mobile networks. They stated explicitly that their product was designed for surveillance, and it was designed to surveil not the good guys, but the bad guys. Well, it's up to them to make that definition, isn't it? So in Miller's account to the Justice Department, when one of Mobilium's representatives pointed out that security companies do not ordinarily offer services to surveillance companies and asked how such an arrangement would work, NSO co-founder Omri Levy allegedly said, "We drop bags of cash at your office." Now, in a statement through a spokesperson, Levy said that he did not believe he had made the remark. He said no business was undertaken with Mobilium. Mr. Levy has no recollection of using the phrase bags of cash and believes he did not do so. So they're starting to walk back the statement. Now, it goes on to say in a statement through a spokesperson, Levy said he did not believe he had made the remark. No business was undertaken with Mobilium. Mr. Levy has no recollection of using the phrase bags of cash, and he believes he didn't do so. However, if those words were used, if they were used, Rick.
It was in jest.
He was just joking. It was entirely in jest.
And the guy at Mobilium took him seriously. Actually thought the Israeli software guy was serious about bringing over bags of cash. What do you think, Doc?
I think that they would bring over bags of cash. I think that's exactly what they would do. Now, separately, Miller last year shared his account with U.S. Rep. Ted Lieu of California, who has a long-standing interest in cellular security. Sure he does. And on December 27th, sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department. He shared redacted copies of Miller's disclosures with Paris-based journalism nonprofit organization Forbidden Stories, which shared them with the Post and other members of the Pegasus Project, a global journalism consortium that's investigating NSO right now. He said, the congressman said, having such access would allow the NSO to spy on vast numbers of cell phones in the United States and foreign countries. And our government can't stand the competition, I guess. In an interview, Congressman Lieu said the proposed manner of payment, the alleged bags of cash, convinced him that a criminal act might have been contemplated even if the account shared by Miller included no direct evidence of illegality. He said, I'm a former prosecutor and you would do cash transactions because you want to hide it. When you have telecom companies and you have software companies, normally they don't engage in cash transactions.
Well, I commend Congressman Lieu for doing the right thing. This man from Mobilium came to him, told him what he experienced. Congressman Lieu, a Democrat congressman from California, issued a criminal referral to the United States Department of Justice. What has the DOJ done with it? This goes back to, what, 2017? How long ago did this happen? Maybe 17 is the other story. But there's, we'll just hope. We'll hope that the FBI is investigating. But when I show you the next story, I don't think so.
So this is The Guardian. Today, headline today. FBI confirms it obtained NSO's Pegasus spyware.
The FBI bought it.
Yes.
They used our tax money to buy the spy software from NSO. Do you think that they investigated them for offering to bribe cell phone companies?
Absolutely not. The Bureau says the sophisticated hacking tool was never used in support of any investigation.
No, here's what the FBI did. The FBI got the software for free in return for not indicting them. That's the way the game's played, Doc.
Right.
The FBI said, we've got the goods on you. You offered bags of cash to a U.S. corporation. We could put you away for 100 years, but we won't arrest you if you just give us the software that we can use to spy on the American people.
And this isn't the first time the FBI has done that, has it, Rick?
No.
Because they've also, in your conversations with Gordon Thomas on Robert Maxwell, we made the connections about the spyware that was being used at that time.
The company was called Inslaw.
Right.
And the Department of Justice worked with Israel to steal the software from Inslaw, and the rest is history. And they just about destroyed. Bill Hamilton was the owner of the company. I guess way back 20-some years ago when that happened. Hey, we're just going to some quick political news before we wrap it up for today. Let's see, what do we got coming up here first? I think I moved my notes. Newsweek, George W. Bush's only 2021 campaign donations were to anti-Trump Republicans. So we're starting to see in the 22 elections for Congress and state offices, we're seeing a battle inside the Republican Party between the establishment Republicans led by George W. Bush and the Trump Republicans led by Donald Trump. So Mr. Bush is donating to anti-Trump Republicans like Liz Cheney.
Right.
Liz Cheney is in serious trouble. Her challenger, what did I see a report the other day, has raised about $1 million in the last reporting cycle. This is for a congressional seat in Wyoming.
Right.
Liz Cheney is most likely going to lose re-election. A poll at the Wyoming Republican Party showed an overwhelming majority of local Republicans wanting to defeat Liz Cheney. So she's going to pay a price for teaming up with Nancy Pelosi. I give her credit for her, she's expressing her views and she's not backing down, but she's going to pay a price for it. But George Bush is out there raising money for the anti-Trump Republicans. Now, look at this next one. Washington Times today.
Right.
Trump fundraising juggernaut has more money to dole out than the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee combined.
Right. So former President Donald Trump is sitting on an absurd amount of campaign cash, more than the DNC and the RNC combined. His political committees raised $51 million over the last 6 months of 2021, and he ended the year with $122 million in the bank, most of that in his Save America Political Action Committee. His operation said the money came from more than 1.6 million donations, and more than 98% of those were considered small dollar contributions of less than $200, and that's significant, folks.
Yes, to raise $51 million in 6 months with gifts under $200.
Right. Now, political operatives have described this as an unprecedented show of force for someone not currently in office, and we're only in 2022.
So how much money has George W. Bush raised? I would say hardly anything. Now, that other story is what he donated himself.
Right.
He's not out there raising money because you know what? The Republicans don't care about George W. Bush anymore. But they are behind Donald Trump.
Why?
Regardless of what you think about Donald Trump, he is the most influential person in American politics. Absolutely. It is not Joe Biden. Joe Biden can't raise money. When's the last time you've seen Joe Biden raising money for the Democratic Party? He can't raise money. They can't take him out in public. Who do they have in the Democratic Party? Who's the star? Who's the star of the Democratic Party?
Oh boy, there is no star.
Other than Barack Obama. Obama's the only one that could go out there and raise money. But I don't even think Obama could raise the kind of money that Trump is raising. So Obama won't go out because he doesn't want to be compared to Trump, because the numbers have to be reported.
Right. Oh, I never considered that.
Yes,
yeah, you're right.
Because now you show it. And Trump is going to brag about how much he's raised. Now, just take that story. Donald Trump's Political Action Committee has raised more money than the Democratic Party and the Republican Party combined. Now, let's go north of the border to Canada. The GoFundMe for Canadian truckers has raised $10 million, more than Canada's political parties raised in the last 3 months.
Than all the political parties. have raised in the last 3 months.
The same thing that's happening in America is happening in Canada. The average people are donating to candidates and movements that represent what they believe are anti-establishment movements.
And did we see that reflected today with Aaron O'Toole stepping down of the Conservative Party in Canada?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he stepped down today because he has not been, there are a lot of conservative candidates that have really been put, for the Freedom Convoy and everything, and
so they removed him.
They removed him, and so there's something happening in Canada. I mean, there really is. So to force the Conservative Party leader to step down, these are, shakings that are taking place out there.
Well, Doc, the very next story, CTV News in Canada. More Canadian provinces are ready to loosen the COVID-19 restrictions. How about that? The Canadian politicians are saying, well, now that we think about it,
there is an election coming.
And there's a lot of trucks blocking the highway, and I think, and they raised $10 million, which is more than all the politicians have raised. And GoFundMe won't release the money, which is a criminal offense. But the politicians can read. They know the people are angry, and the people are not donating to their campaigns. They're donating to the truckers.
Yes.
The truckers should run for parliament.
Oh, you're right.
Come on, truckers, get out there and run for parliament.
The trucker party.
Yes. Defeat them. I just thought of a funny campaign line, but I can't say it.
Okay.
I'll tell you privately.
Well, despite what's happening in Canada and other places around the world, there are some that are still holding the line on the lie. This is a story. This is a story that coming out of Ryanair. Mask to stay in force on planes for years to come.
Yeah, in your dream, buddy. The CEO of Ryanair says wearing a mask is now like going through security at an airport.
Now, he did, it's interesting that they made a comparison to this in 9/11. That after 9/11, you became familiar with the TSA and security issues and like that, where the same thing a year earlier you would have been bucking and screaming about it. But Ryanair has...
So they incrementally, they keep taking us deeper and deeper into the dystopian police state.
And so Ryanair has warned that face coverings will remain in force on flights for years to come, as bosses insisted it was a small price to pay to avoid a return to COVID travel restrictions. Neil Sorahan, the airline's finance chief, compared current requirements to wear a face covering with restrictions of liquids in the face of the terrorist attacks on America 20 years ago. He said masks will be something that will be with us for a while to come. If that is the price we have to pay for the next few months in the summer, it's a small price to pay. It's a bit like after 9/11, we ended up with our toiletries and plastic bags. Maybe we'll have to live with masks for a while. You know what, Rick? We have a generation of kids that have grown up today that never knew what it was like to be able to walk out to the gate, with your family and wave your relatives goodbye as they got on the plane, or
and
not having to get probed by somebody before you got on a plane, or have to empty out your water bottle before you could take it on the plane.
Yeah, but back then we didn't buy water.
Yes, we didn't buy water.
That was a crazy idea, buying water.
Water? The water's everywhere.
So this guy at Ryanair, he's blowing smoke. The people are just going to stop flying.
Yes, or stop flying Ryanair until someone.
Well, he wants to make it a government mandate that all airlines have to require masks. Okay, you guys are going to go bankrupt. Oh, I get it. You'll get subsidies. You'll become an arm of the state.
Well, aren't they now?
Of course they are.
They were bailed out at the beginning of the pandemic, and they're an extension of the law enforcement of really America.
Well, he can wear his mask to bed. I don't care, but I don't have to get on his airline.
And this is despite the fact that air on airplanes has to go through 7 layers of filtering.
Yes.
In order to maintain quality. Nothing's getting through those filters.
That's right.
Nothing. So, but hey, well, go with the science, right?
Well, nothing's getting through this Democratic Congresswoman's brain either. This is New York Post today. This Congresswoman from Alabama will not meet with any voter, any citizen in her district that has not been vaccinated with the gene therapy drug.
Right. So Representative Terry Sewell of Alabama, she's a Democrat, of course, and members of her staff will not hold in-person meetings with people yet to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Said proof that COVID-19 vaccinations are required for every in-person or in-office meeting with the Congresswoman or with staff. Reads a disclaimer on an email sent out by Sewell's office that was obtained by the Spectator.
Did you ever think, Doug, we'd get to this point that a member of Congress has a sign on their door that says, if you have not been injected with an experimental gene therapy drug, you cannot come in this office?
No, I can't imagine that at all.
Well, it's happening.
So now the disclaimer came attached to an email offering the staffs of other congressional offices free Alabama peanuts. Now, though trading promotional products from their respective states is a common occurrence for a congressional office, staffers looking to get their hands on the Alabama peanuts may be out of luck if they have yet to receive the vaccine. And so if you want peanuts, Rick, from Alabama, you're going to have to be fully vaccinated.
That's okay. She can keep
I'll pass on her
she
peanuts.
Can have her peanuts. I don't care. In the state of Illinois, a state legislator, Deb Conroy, a Democrat, wants concentration camps for people who refuse to be injected with gene therapy drugs.
Right. The COVID craze has gone bone deep here. Villa Park State Rep Deb Conroy, Democrat, wants to isolate or quarantine persons who are unable or unwilling to receive vaccines, medications, or other treatments. Now, notice she didn't restrict it to COVID, okay? Any of those. So if HB 4640 were to become law, persons exposed to an infectious disease could be placed under Public Health Department observation, only possible in a contained atmosphere with department watch guards, some suggest such as a concentration camp. Now, the bill says to prevent the spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease, the Public Health Department may, pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of this section, isolate or quarantine persons whose refusal to undergo observation and monitoring results in uncertainty regarding whether he or she has been exposed to or is infected with a dangerously contagious or infectious disease, and here's the caveat, or otherwise poses a danger to the public's health.
Or otherwise.
Yes. So HB 4640 would also say...
You mean like having conservative views? You could be...
I mean, that's a pretty broad definition there,
that
Rick,
could
right?
be danger to the public health.
So HB 4640 would also set up a state network data collection system for persons that have received mandated vaccines, medications, or otherwise. So here you actually have a sitting member of a state legislature basically calling for quarantine camps, containment camps, concentration camps for people who have otherwise.
And it's a bill in the Illinois state legislature right now.
That's just
You got to
crazy.
take this stuff seriously because the Democrats are in control of the state government in Illinois. U.S. Army, the Department of Army to initiate separation of COVID-19 vaccination order refusers.
Now, in spite of the fact that a lot of countries around the world are dropping mandates and things like that, the Army is pressing forward because they got to keep up the lie. So under a directive issued by Secretary of the Army Christine Wormuth, commanders are to initiate involuntary administrative separation proceedings against any soldier who has refused the COVID-19 vaccination. And I don't know if you noticed in the picture or not, Rick, it's a lot easier to inject somebody when you take the cap off the needle. So, so this is actually from the U.S. Army website today.
Yeah.
So this isn't like a report on it. This is, what the Army is saying is going to be happening. So the battle lines have been drawn for a lot of military members, and a lot of people have separated over the last few months, Rick, and we know of several ourselves. Now they're making it basically a do or die situation, aren't they?
They haven't gotten the memo, have they? They need a trucker rally. Some of these people are really slow learners. It just takes them a while. Like they haven't gotten the message in California, New York, Illinois. You know, we have parts of the United States that are kind of like borderline mentally ill, like Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. But the Canadians are starting to have...
wake up a little bit.
They're waking up. Has Justin Trudeau been found yet?
No, it's sort of like the groundhog. You know, maybe he saw his shadow and scurried
You know,
back
the
in his hole.
groundhog died.
Yeah, there was a what was it? Melrose Mel.
Yeah.
The groundhog in New Jersey passed away yesterday, the day before Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
I guess that means we have 6 more weeks of COVID, right?
Maybe so. All right, the last two we're going to show you are world maps. We're going to show you what the vaccination rate looks like right now around the world. The first one, the countries that are in red, and this is very interesting because the United States is one of those red countries. If you look down at the bottom of the chart, the blue already above 70% fully vaccinated, the red not on track. Oh, which one are we doing? All right, not on track to 70% fully vaccinated, and then the light blue on track to 70% fully vaccinated, and the kind of white gray is there's no data there at all. Can we enlarge that again? Can we go back where it's larger? Okay, so.
Yeah, this was the still from the website itself.
Yeah, okay, so what I want you to see, the United States is actually, despite the propaganda from the media and the politicians, how did the United States get on this map? Doc, weren't we told everybody here is vaccinated except you and me and a couple crazy people?
I guess so.
Well, we're on the map.
You mean
that we're not cooperating with the globalists?
We're not on track to the 70%, Rick?
No, we're not on track to be fully vaccinated. So the media is lying because this map supposedly represents actual numbers. That map actually looks like the election results where the whole country is voted Republican except for a few blue
right.
states, you know. Canada is blue. They're over 70%.
Australia's blue.
Australia's blue. New Zealand's blue. Just north of Australia, you see that red? That's Papua New Guinea. In fact, can you guys can you move your cursor around on that? It'll open up. I don't know if you guys can do that in the control room. It'll actually pop up the names of the countries. In South America, I see Panama is not participating. Then Costa Rica is.
Right.
And then you get up there and let's see, that is Honduras and El Salvador, I think. And
I forget which one's which.
Yeah. Down inside, down at the bottom of South America, that's Paraguay. Africa, almost all of Africa, has resisted the vaccine, and yet they don't have very many infections there.
Right. It's a mystery, isn't it? A mystery.
Go figure. Russia hasn't participated. You get into the Middle East, most of the Arab countries have not gone along with the agenda.
So let's look at another.
The Caribbean islands, Doc.
Right.
The Caribbean islands, no matter how hard they're trying to push the people in the Caribbean, the people are not getting vaccinated.
Except for Cuba.
Yes.
Cuba will.
Well, that's a communist country.
But all the rest of them, even Jamaica, I was surprised at Jamaica. And if you look at that little blue dot right in the middle of the map, just above Saudi Arabia there, that's Israel. Despite all of Israel's efforts to vaccinate their entire population, they're still not on track to fully 70% vaccinated either. So they haven't reached that threshold either.
No.
So
very interesting. Now we have another map, and
right. So this is the push in the past 6 months. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So which countries vaccinated 40% of their population with at least one dose by the end of 2012? All right. So now this is over the course of 2021, where the map looks a lot different here. 40%, at least 40% of the population has been
with
vaccinated.
one dose.
Now, once again, Look at Africa. Africa has not even come close. And yet, is there a pandemic in Africa?
No. They don't have TV news.
So they can't get the virus if they don't have...
No, they haven't heard about it yet. You got to watch
Okay.
television to get infected.
Okay.
But it shows you that the globalist agenda has failed.
Yes.
It's failed. They have to do something else. And trust me, they will regroup. They will come back. Bill Gates told us there's another pandemic coming. It's going to be more dangerous, more deadly. He should know. But we'll be ready for them. We've got their number now. We know how they play this game. And we'll meet them head on. But we beat them this time. Give yourself a pat on the back. We beat them. There's a few holdouts out there, like Gavin Newsom and Governor Hochul in New York and Pritzker in Illinois. There's a few holdouts. They haven't figured it out yet. Australia, New Zealand, but they'll eventually come around. But other places, I mean, just look what's happened in Canada in 1 week.
Yes.
1 week. The politicians are crumbling. They're collapsing. Suddenly, hey, we got to end the lockdowns. We got to end the masks. We got to end the vaccinations, the passports, all that. It's all done. It's over. Yeah, because the people are standing up. That's what happens when people resist and refuse to back down and stand up to the politicians and the news media. Thank you, every one of you who've done your part out there. We're going to continue to do our part here. God bless you. We will be back here tomorrow.
God bless you.